Greetings! It's time for my next video. So I've had a couple of requests for specifically Chris Cornell's Sun and Moon combination. So here we go. It's going to be Sun in Cancer, Moon in Sagittarius. So we've done a few of these videos now. If you're new, hello and welcome. We talk about the qualities of the Sun as opposed to the qualities of the Moon. Sometimes when people read descriptions of a moon sign, and that's their sun sign, they will say, oh yeah, that's me, it's totally me. But the motivations of how each sign is expressed changes. So the sun really is your psyche, it's your motivation for living, it is your ego, it is your free will, as well as your true will. It is essentially, in many ways, it's what drives you. And the moon is different. The moon's reactions are brought forth from a much more subconscious place. And a lot of the emotional reactions that we develop very early on. Some astrologers, and I kind of agree with this, say that the moon sign develops often before the sun sign does, because the moon sign develops based on a lot of things at home and on the mother and how safe you feel as a child. And so I think that a lot of times we have to kind of consider where the motivations are coming from. So anyways, it'll be easier to understand if I just get on with it. So the sun represents one's vitality and ego, your free will, how you feel empowered, and also what makes you feel disempowered, and how you take or give power to others, based on, of course, how in control of your own life that you feel, right? So the vitality of a Cancer sun lies in its feelings of security, as well as a stable home life. The Cancer's ego is dependent on how needed he or she feels, and if the subject is currently nurturing someone or something from seed, it could be a person or an artistic project or a home renovation or formal education or training, it's the Cancer will feel a little bit more confident and like it has a purpose. Many Cancers I know, their career doesn't always have a lot to do with taking care of others, although that certainly does happen. But a lot of what they do in their spare time is visiting sick relatives or checking in on people to see how they're doing. A lot of really strong Cancer types work with the elderly, for instance, and caregiving in that way. The Cancer will is strongest when it's protecting something or someone. Maybe it's protecting its home, and not from like anything dangerous, just, you know, cultivating the home, maybe as a homemaker or family. You know, more masculine Cancer, maybe more about the more distance care, which is like providing food and shelter, and somebody who's a little bit more on the feminine spectrum of Cancer will want to be more involved with the one-on-one nurturing of their home or family. As a cardinal sign, they like to start things, so like they start families, you know, artistic projects, businesses. Actually, Cancers are pretty shrewd in business. So, and they often treat it like a sentient being that requires care and feeding. And they're particularly good at starting something and then letting somebody else take it from its middle stages upward. A Cancer will generally feel disempowered when others withdraw their trust or affection. And when they can't make sense of their emotions, like where their emotions end and somebody else's begins. You know, the water signs in general don't have the best sense of boundaries. Scorpio might be the one that has a better sense of boundaries, but in any case, a lot of Cancers feel that they are empaths, but what they really are is just highly sensitive. When you're empathic, you can feel things independently of your own experiences and perspectives. You're not just taking in somebody else's feelings and sort of having this vicarious response to them. An empathic person can literally feel something that they haven't experienced before, or that they have no direct relation with. In most cases, Cancers are just highly sensitive. It's like they have emotional antennae on all the time. So Cancer suns will give power to others when they're feeling confident and they feel a sense of their own power and control in their lives. They'll tune into what other people's needs are, and they're able to give exactly what they need. So it could be an encouraging word or a hug or money, or however they best express that sort of thing. Sometimes to the point of enabling, right? So they're excellent counselors and benefactors, but Cancer tends to the ego tends to hold on to the idea that if they're not needed directly in a very base way by somebody, either whether it's a child or a sibling or a sick parent or a kind of a weak-willed friend, they often feel like, where's my purpose now? And the purpose really lies, of course, in taking care of themselves and feeding their own desires and interests. And so Cancers do make pretty good enablers, both solar and moon. Cancer will take power from others in exactly the way they feel disempowered. They'll be brooding, they'll withhold love and affection and suddenly turn very cold. They can hold grudges forever because they have a very long emotional memory. They have a hard time sometimes letting things go. If something or somebody ever hurt their pride, it's pretty hard for them to forget, and they're able to summon those feelings really fresh when they need to, which is great if you're an artist and you create things, but not so good if you're trying to live a very in the moment type of life, right? So let's switch gears over into the moon. So the moon represents your emotions, your intuition, what makes you feel at home, how you express and interpret emotions, and how you viscerally react to being threatened emotionally, or how you carefully respond, right? So knee-jerk reaction is very much a very childlike and adolescent way of dealing with your emotions. And then hopefully we mature to the point where we can take some space between stimulus and response, and we can say, I'm not going to take this personally. Now, how can I respond, right? So Sagittarius Moon, I have Sagittarius Moon, so I have a little bit of an affinity to it, and my sun sign is also a water sign. It's Pisces. So it's a really interesting combination, and I've read multiple times where, the idea that if you have a solar sun, what other kind of sun is there? If you have a solar water sign and a lunar fire sign, that it can create great upheavals and extremes in emotions. And I do think that that's true if not properly cultivated, and there's definitely some propensity for falling into depressive states, and then all of a sudden being fine for a little while. Again, in this case, it has a lot to do with ego versus your deeper emotional instincts. So Sagittarius is a sign of the seeker, and it is symbolized by, of course, the half horse, half man or woman. So it could be a centaur or a centaurite. And the moon is about security. So then we're talking about security through seeking. So it's a kind of an interesting phrase, right? And so the idea is that the moon and Sagittarius person has a bit of a roamer, a bit of a gypsy about them, but it's like a feeling gypsy. It's an emotional gypsy. It's the ability to bounce between emotional landscapes in a mutable, as Sagittarius is mutable, way. So a lot of times it's indicated that Sagittarius moon children, their mother is generally not around very much, or the mom is around physically but maybe not emotionally. They might travel a lot for work. They might have to leave the household for some reason or become estranged in some way. It's also and I've seen this corroborated in plenty of interpretations, seen where a child with Sagittarius moon, for some reason, invites some kind of jealousy, particularly if it's female to female, not so much if it's male to female, and maybe even just don't have that initial really close bond in the first few years or year or two of existence. So that is something to keep in mind. And so the emotions of this moon sign, it's fire and mutability, right? So so their ability to express themselves, their emotions are changeable. They're very exuberant in a lot of ways. Usually Sagittarius moons have very clear and distinct facial expressions, particularly in certain houses. Sagittarius sun generally does too, unless they're, kind of colored by Cancer moon. Cancer rising, some of the water rising signs, but in any case. And so they feel things a lot of times through their body. You have to think that it's a centaur, it's a very animalistic type of expression of the emotions too. And their intuition it's very strong, like they have a desire for wisdom, the sage Sagittarius, that often gets them into sticky situations, because even if they have the wisdom and intuition to see that a project or a life event or a potential relationship, it might be kind of like less than ideal, if they have any interest at all in that person or wherever they're going or whatever they're creating, they're going to do it anyways, despite all your advice, everyone's advice, and even despite sometimes how they know it's going to end, because there's a clear idea with the Sagittarius moon that everything is going to come out roses, and that there's that deep, very visceral desire to experience things and to gain wisdom. So initially the Sagittarius energy is espoused with the idea of intelligence. So they're going to want to learn things, and they're going to become maybe potentially addicted to information, and have a high emotional connection to people who are of an above average intellect, people who are curious. And then over time, as the moon evolves, and this is true of the sun too, they start realizing that experiences and wisdom and living in the moment are really what they're going for. Because if you're Sagittarius, you're ruled by Jupiter, and that's very expansive, and ultimately it taps into a more universal connection with people. And the idea that there's more to life than what you can see. And while Sagittarius does like to remain rooted in some way with its four hooves, it also has the ability to shoot into the cosmos. So yes, there's a certain logic and desire for evidence that a Sagittarius demands, but they also have the capacity to know that there may be things that cannot be proven yet, and they have a unique desire to learn about those things. And what usually makes a Sagittarius feel at home, sometimes being away a lot, or just having a lot of opportunities to meet different people, go to different cultures. I know that if I go to a different place, whether it's across the ocean or just a town in the state I live in I've never been to, I always feel kind of excited, and I almost feel more at home trying to adapt. I like having to adapt to a culture or a set of people or a set of rules, learning how to get places. For whatever reason, that's just really exciting to me. I think that's exciting to a lot of Sagittarius moons, and they can feel at home pretty much anywhere they are. Of course, the Cancer side of what we're talking about today is going to sort of have a conflict with that, because the desire to own a home or have a home base would be really strong, or to have something or some people to come home to would be pretty important to that solar Cancer. But also, when we talk about Sagittarius Moon, we're talking about bluntness and honesty, so there's not a lot of subterfuge. And as such, they will not try to really read into anything that you're trying to say. So if you try to, tell them in a really backhanded way that, you care about them or that you don't like them, for the most part, they're just going to take you at face value. It's not because they can't sense something else might be going on, but it's because their assumption is if you really wanted to say something, you would say it because they do. And there are obviously going to be exceptions to this. So this is where the Cancer sun comes in. And Cancer, has this ability to get really deep into people's psyche, and sometimes they don't even know that they're pushing other people's buttons, especially if they're in one of their more brooding hermit crab states. So when you don't really know that you're getting into somebody else's prickly emotional bits, you have a tendency to trigger them in a negative way. And so here's where we have a bit of a dichotomy between the water and the fire going on here. So maybe in this case, Cancer's going to feel things and know that something that you and your words and your actions aren't quite matching, and depending on where Sagittarius Moon is and how you're able to access it in your chart, you may very well become very quickly pissed off at somebody, because at some point they're going to just get you so riled up that you're going to call them out on whatever it is that they're doing. You're going to say, you know what, just tell me how you feel. Tell me how you feel right now. And Sagittarius Moon is prepared to pick up and go if they have to. I know from experience, even with the water, the solar water, in this case, as a Pisces, or in this case, Cancer, there is a certain amount of sentimentality, and there's a lot of emotion flowing from the ego standpoint. And as soon as, I know that for me, as soon as I've had my pride wounded, meaning, you've indicated to me that you're not sure if you want to hang out with me or be in a relationship with me or whatever. As soon as as particular water signs realize that, it hurts a lot. But then what water signs are good at is retreating into themselves, not trying to make any waves necessarily. And then once we start to feel that sense of not being wanted, and we absorb that sense of not being wanted, we're no longer in a position to want to convince somebody else to be with us. We just say, you don't want me? Somebody else will. I want me. That's all that matters. See you later. And the Sagittarius Moon is very, very adept at just getting up and picking up. And sometimes they will bypass dealing with things emotionally, dealing with their feelings, dealing with their childhood, by either getting up and moving, like, oh, if I move out of my hometown, I'll be fixed, or there's nobody here for me to be friends with. I'm gonna go move to Timbuktu. There's nothing for me to do here. I've got no emotional ties. I'm gonna go move somewhere else, which is all well and good. But if you're not working on your own sense of unfulfillment, then you're just going to take your sense of unfulfillment anywhere you go. So no matter what external circumstances change, you're still the same person, so then you're going to start to get the same situations, just with maybe different colors and faces and different scenery going on with it. So and Sagittarius Moon does like to seek within themselves too, so there's a fair amount of that self-reflection going on. And they've been accused of being a little bit too optimistic at times, and they've been accused of running over other people's feelings sometimes, never really from a place of cruelty, unless there's some Scorpio hidden around there. And the Virgo energy can be quite carping and cruel too if it wants to be. But Cancer, as nurturing and fluffy and warm as Cancer can be, if in this case, if the pride is wounded in some way, if their free will is threatened in some way, they have no problem snap it back at you with their little crab claws, and then they'll kick you with the horse hooves, and then that's it. And like I said, they can hold grudges. The sign of Sagittarius doesn't generally hold grudges. It doesn't really feel like it's worth it. But like I said, it depends on how strong the sun is aspected in the chart, as opposed to the moon, right? Nothing is ever cut and dried in astrology. So if a Sagittarius is still working on developing their emotional reactions in life, like I said, they'll get up and leave. They'll say really mean shit. Because being blunt and honest and cutting you down with their words when they feel emotionally threatened and you've breached their trust, if there's anything you do to evoke anything from their childhood, because we're talking about the moon sign, so anytime something bubbles up that has this emotional fingerprint of a negative experience from your childhood, if you don't recognize what it is and you don't recognize that you're treating a present situation like something really shitty that happened in the past, then you're going to overreact to it. So all moon signs really need to check out what went on in their childhood and see and notice if there's any correlations. Because not only the moon sign, but moon placement in your chart and certain aspects to it can tell me a lot about what happened in your childhood, which parents may or may not have been more influential, if there was any potential abuse, if there was any potential abandonment, if things were hunky-dory. So that would be important to explore, and if you need help, you can always contact me. So, to close this off, we're going to talk about how the sun in Cancer and the moon in Sagittarius might have some similarities. There's not a lot. The signs themselves are, in conjunct, so they kind of don't understand each other. They just sort of like barely like that, just like that. Sound effects and everything. But there are some similarities. So they do like connecting with other people. Cancer, it's more of a subversive commingling of emotions and sharing secrets and feeling safe with one another. But they're a little bit more introverted naturally. And the Sagittarius moon is infinitely curious and loves to hear people's stories, like to hear about their backgrounds. I like hearing about your past and your childhood and all of the stories of your life, if you like to tell me. Because everyone's story is different and not mine. So there's that. Plus, it tells me, it gives me insight into you. And as much as, Cancer can be a homebody, Sagittarius, not so much a homebody at all. But, so there's going to be a little bit of a pull there of that idea of, staying at home, being introverted, and then going out and seeking and finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's not a lot of similarities here. Cancer tends to be a little bit more on the brooding Eeyore side, not to knock Eeyore, because he was my favorite, actually. But, and then Sagittarius has the eternal optimism. So again, a lot of this depends on, there's certain aspects and certain houses and certain angles that can turn on the sun or the moon in different ways to see which one sort of has more influence and where you're going to default to. So that's just, again, something you're going to have to check out in the chart. And, Sagittarius loves to make people laugh. That's kind of what they do. And particularly when Sagittarius moon in particular can sense when somebody is, when they're down, when they're not feeling, emotionally safe. There's that ability to just sort of get in there and find something that's going to make them laugh and find something that's going to take them out of their state. And the Sagittarius moon doesn't generally like to join somebody in their low place. They like to sort of gently bring them up to, a higher place of feeling. And sometimes they can seem a little like I don't, like they have no empathy, but it's not necessarily true. And with the Cancer sun here, there's going to be a great ability to understand what's going on. So I would actually go to my Cancer Sun, Sagittarius Moon friend, if I had one, if I was down. Like, I think that would be the perfect person to go to, actually, because not only would they understand, be able to, empathize, but then they could make me laugh my worries away, at least for the moment. And then the other thing that would stick out to me about these two signs coming together is, as Cancer has a real desire to be home and have a family, or at least have a home base and have something that they're nurturing. Again, it doesn't have to be actual people. Sometimes they're good at nurturing projects or music, or you can nurture a lot of things. The Sagittarius personality is genuinely pretty creative and curious. And so this actually, to me, is a really good combination for somebody who does any kind of art. And because it might bring about those mood swings, those ups and downs, I think that, at least for me anyways, there's a lot of really great music made by people who have a hard time navigating those extremes, those highs and lows. So in my opinion, it's a great artistic combination. Anytime there's friction or conflict within, like, luminaries, it creates a lot of character in the person. So if you have a square of your sun and moon, let's say like I do, enjoy it. Enjoy that your personality is a bit more nuanced, and that you can get along with a variety of people. Okay, so that, of course, is just a nutshell. We could go on for another 20 minutes. Not going to happen, though, because I want to keep these as short as I can. Please put in your requests. I have quite a few in the queue. That rhymes. So yours may not be attended to for a little bit, but hopefully I'm going to get back on the horse and do a few more of these before the year ends. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe if you liked what you heard, and I will see you later.